Get the go button.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all for coming on short notice. Chair would like to recognize Andrew Vigeland.
Norwegian.
Ah.
Good try.
Sorry, I've been saying it wrong.
That's all right. Good afternoon, everybody. Of course, I think your chair as well are respectful of everybody's time, so thank you for being here while we discuss this. You are in receipt of the counteroffer the district received from Alex Ader. In terms of action tonight, the reason that we had this meeting was because the counteroffer contained a request for an increase in the number of years from 2 years to a 3-year contract, and also contains a request for an increase to compensation, not in the form of initial compensation, but in the form of subsequent raises. To give the board an idea of where you stand, as we discussed last week, general elementary contract law is that a counteroffer extinguishes the original offer, which means we're at square one. It is as if the board had never made the initial offer. It's up to you to decide how you wish to address this counteroffer, whether you want to try to give Mr. Ader what he is asking for, or whether you want to go a different direction. What I would suggest is that if you pass a motion to make another offer tonight, that you authorize your chair to work with us on a little more detailed basis, just in case there is further negotiation or negotiation over items that are not as important as term compensation, because we can work those out with her without the need for another board meeting. But any questions you have, we can get into those now, or we can talk about procedure, whatever you want to discuss.
One of the questions is back to this health insurance thing. It looks like there is an allotment there. It just doesn't specify it. So
yes, so the way the contract is worded is that the superintendent is provided with the same coverage provided to non-union, full-time classified employees. The reason the clause is written that way is to keep districts on the right track with regard to the ACA. If you provide additional or enhanced benefits to a highly compensated employee, you will be potentially subject to audit by the ACA, and there could be adverse tax consequences both to the district and to the employees if that is found to have occurred. So the default provision that we have is that the superintendent receives the same coverage as those individuals. In your case, in Sommer's case, you can provide extremely generous benefits to non-union classified individuals, including paying what sounds like a full-time family premium.
It's not the entire, it's just the employee.
It's just the employee. Okay, so that's worth clarifying.
Yes.
I think the summary of coverage that I provided to Alex contains some of those details, but I can do a better job of reaching out to him, letting him know this is what the coverage entails. An alternative to offering Alex what he's asking for in terms of health insurance and possibly putting you guys afoul of the ACA would be to do some sort of deferred compensation, 403B plan, a tax advantaged account of some kind. I don't know if that's something that he would be willing to do, but if we were to come back and, stay the course on health insurance, we could certainly say, but if you're looking at additional costs resulting from this coverage for the family, the district would consider a 403B plan in addition to your regular compensation of the following amount. That's pretty typical, but we don't know if he would buy it. We don't know if he would be interested. Your chair and I would just have to work that out.
And I reached out to Janet. So basically, his insurance with the high deductible premium for his family is $1,715, of which the school district will pay $856 of that. So his responsibility is the $859, roughly, a little over $10,000 a year that he pays in health insurance premiums.
okay, was there some sort of verbiage in here that said that the principals were allotted 10,000 and some on top of, or what was that?
No, I think that 856.
If you did.
Okay.
That's close to the same
Well,
number I just read.
that's
It's
okay.
almost the same. So
Right.
essentially, there's an allotment of a little over 10,000 that goes towards
Right.
their premium.
Okay.
Now, whether If he picked like just an individual plan, and that cost is $856, he'd have no premium out of pocket. But because he wants a family plan, he has to cover whatever the difference is above and beyond that allotment. It's in there.
That's right, yeah.
And I know there's priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, priority 4. Really nerded out on this today.
I've read it like 19 times.
Right.
For just trying to figure it out.
To get it, yeah.
And to try to process
I was trying to figure
what
out
we can do.
what would be a way to go. And you mentioned the 403B, and I'm assuming he's looking for pocket money to help cover the costs, is essentially where a 403B would not.
And you have to be careful in the way in which you address this, because
Right.
the other thing that is prohibited in the IRS regulations is cash in lieu of benefits.
Mm-hmm.
So if the board were to turn around and say, well, the heck with it, we'll tack the 10 grand onto his salary, the board action doing that would basically be the evidence of cash in lieu of benefits. So a 403B plan from this point forward, given that you have already made an offer with a certain salary, would be the lawful way of addressing that. You also might have a Section 125 cafeteria plan. Our district has a cafeteria plan. That's basically a benefit trading house that you're allowed to set up under the regulations. So a certain amount of money goes toward the cafeteria plan. The employee, the superintendent, is allowed to allocate parts of their compensation or deferred compensation to a certain benefit, right? You have life insurance, health insurance, some other benefit provided over here, and it's basically pick and choose for the employee. But if you don't have a cafeteria plan established already, the lawful way that would accord with the IRS regulations would be a 403B. So you could turn around and potentially offer him the difference in the 403B to make him whole and address it in that way if the board isn't comfortable.
So I guess in light of other considerations of stuff he's talking about, in regards to like priority 3, he's talking about moving to a 3-year contract.
That's
right?
correct.
Trying to word this so I'm not stepping in. But considering not doing like a 403B, but in light of him wanting a 3-year contract, I think the board was, for the most part, pretty aligned with wanting to stick to 2 years. On the 2 years is, is it something we could potentially look at as to incentivize him to stick with the 2-year contract? We look at going from maybe 115 to a 120 base for a yearly wage with a 4% increase for year 2. And then contract negotiation occurs December of year 2, right, mid of year 2. And then looking at that, I went and did research of what the cost of living for Roberts, Montana versus the cost of living for Kalispell, Montana. Roberts, Montana is about $86,400 a year per family. For Kalispell, Montana, it's a little over $101,000. So if he came in with a salary of $120,000 versus a salary, I think he's at $90,000 right now, is what I read on his sheet. The cost of living is roughly 96% of his salary now. We're at 120, he'll be about 85% cost of living of his salary, which means he's, dollar-wise, he's up going up more than 10%, but the net of moving here is getting basically a net 10% raise to move here at 120. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So that's what we're saying, if you're going to move your family across the way, across the state, that's what I was thinking, well, maybe that's a way to incentivize. You can say 120. You say that healthcare is what it is. That just, we're not doing a 403B. We increase to 120 for year 1, a 4% increase for year 2, which I think would be 124.8 for year 2. And then that sets the baseline for renegotiation after 2 years to incentivize. And with that, we can say your net increase for what the cost of living is a 10% increase. And that cost of living includes healthcare and all that. So as a ballpark.
For that wage, so what information that I could get off of, like the census and the state's page and the Kalispell superintendent, it seems like that wage is significantly above what other superintendents are making.
I thought we were right in range when we were talking.
You're pretty average with 115. Of course, Alex is, I believe, a 7 or 8 year superintendent in his current school district. So you could see that number go up or down based on the experience of the candidate. That's common. I would grade Alex as an experienced superintendent. It's not like you're hiring somebody who has a year here or a year there. And for that reason, you certainly could look at increasing compensation. There's nothing tying the district's hands in that respect. It's really whatever this board is able to decide.
Do you know, do most superintendents have the doctorates?
Most superintendents have a master's or a doctorate in education. In terms of earning a superintendent endorsement in Montana, which Alex is endorsed as well, that's worth pointing out. There are lots of school districts who don't have the luxury of having a field of people who are actually endorsed. They have people who are IP or who are in internships. But yeah, typically individuals who have their certification also have their master's or doctorate. Very few superintendents out there with something under that, but they do exist. There are 20-year superintendents out there with bachelors.
And he is endorsed.
He is.
He has a master's or I don't remember.
Master's.
Yeah.
He has a master's.
In 2012. I guess my other thought on this, as you were speaking with doing things that are outside of potentially the norm, like the 403B, or I'm not for certain, but I felt like we had said that the superintendent in the past had taken the same increase in pay as what was given to the teachers.
Did he mention that? I recall that coming up in one of the interviews. One of your finalists said, I just took with the teacher stuff.
Then maybe that was
I don't remember who it was.
Mr. Price.
I did that. Did you know?
Yeah,
What?
it wasn't Alex that said that.
Yeah.
No, but I sent an email like 3:30. Did you see that? I was asking if in the collective bargaining agreement, do you know what the cost of living adjustment is?
No, I did not say that, sorry.
We don't have a cost of living adjustment, we just,
Is it just gross wage? Okay, that was my question, is if there was any pay.
Just of setting a pattern of making special circumstances for one individual versus what the masses of the population is getting is the only thought that came to mind when starting to talk about different insurance packages or different raises than everybody else. Not that I'm opposed to it, but I do think it can be a slippery slope or a misstep.
I actually discussed that with my brother-in-law today about that, and a union discussion versus a non-union person is, in his opinion, and I've never been on this side of it, but are totally different. Because you have a collective bargaining agreement that the union has to agree to. I mean, that's their thing. And if they see somebody else that's getting different, then they have to bargain for that. That individual and what is negotiated with him is with him or her or that person. He just said it's outside of that. And my thoughts were that exact same thing, and that's why I had brought it up, is that looking at some things in here where in the collective bargaining agreements, no vacation time or something during the school year, those sorts of things. But if you see that that's allowed for somebody else, and that's what I kind of brought that up, that, you know, he was with the REA Electrical Association, and he was an exempt person, and then they had the people that were in the union. And you couldn't really negotiate or discuss anything with like hours versus somebody who's exempt and non-hours, because anybody that gets called in on the actually they're on an hourly wage, then they get benefits for that. But you have a salary wage over here, so there's differences in that. And I only bring that up in that that's somebody who's been on that, looked at those things and said, you can't treat the way the union bargains the way that somebody else does, because that's they're two separate things.
However, it is public knowledge, so they will
Yep,
see
they will see it,
what the
yeah.
other has done. And then the other, on top of that, I guess one of the other priorities had to do with teleworking.
Yep.
And that was another question of, do we have the standard of teleworking in the school district? And what does that look like? Is what he's asking align with what others are permitted?
I know, yeah.
Whereas again, this is another special circumstance.
That was a question I had. You don't have any remote work days
We don't.
now? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what stuck out, is three things that could potentially be different of what everybody else was being offered.
In the last collective bargaining agreement, do you remember the rate, were they 3% raises?
3%, correct?
Because that was one of my questions too, is what, to stick somewhat within the threshold of what kind of's been there a little bit, so it is somewhat fair treatment, similar treatment.
I can't remember if it was cost of living or I think it's called CIP, the index, but it was 2.9%, so.
CPI, Consumer Price Index. Yeah. So yeah, and then speaking of the remote work, he's asking about the 260. I mean, there's 102 days in the year that's weekends. You back that off of 365 or 263 days, so we're not managing minutes for him. And I think the 45 hours per week is just a parameter to set an expectation that basically you're doing the job full time.
Yeah.
So
It's exactly the same as if this board were to engage in deliberations for the next 5 hours. I would be sitting here and helping you the whole time, as an example. You're not. I'm here till the job is done. Also, his contention that if he were to work past midnight on any certain day, he would need an additional day on the contract. That's not supported. The language that was provided to him is clear. You are able to set hours for an exempt employee, minimum hours, and then require them to potentially work more on top of that. That's the flexibility given under the Fair Labor Standards Act.
So yeah, I mean, I think there's some areas that potentially we come back at. And also in my mind, if we're increasing the wage, I feel like that's where we have the most flexibility. That's why I went there first, versus creating a 403B versus grouping.
Yeah.
If we go to the wage, I think that's the easiest area to make an adjustment for. And then other concessions, we just, it's a full-time job. Your salary, but I did have a question, like how many vacation sick days are in the contract?
So right now he has 5 personal days, which are use it or lose it, non-refundable, non-payout. In addition to the 5 personal days, he has Title II leave accruing to employees of a public agency in Montana. Which depend on his years of service to a public school, not just this public school, but also his time in Roberts. So, I'm just trying to pull up the table here.
As you're pulling out, because in his example, if they're visiting family, I'm assuming he's on vacation. So that's unexpected. But if he has to make a phone call and he's working the whole day, if you're gone, you're gone.
It's delegation.
Yeah, so sick leave under Title II, he gets 12 working days each year of service, without restriction as to the number of working days that may be accumulated. In addition, he does get Title II vacation leave as well. And that is the leave that is accrued according to his number of years of service to a public agency. Okay, so he would be 15 vacation days per year for the first 10 years of employment, 18 per year for the next 5 years. So he would be in that first 10-year period, and he would have 15 vacation days per year, 12 sick days per year, in addition to the 5 personal days that you provided him.
Okay, so 5 personal, 5 use it or lose it,
Yes,
15 vacation,
correct.
and 12 sick.
Correct.
Okay.
I'm inclined not to address the 10 remote days because that just, to me, is trying to add on 10 more days of away leave time. If you already have vacation time, and you already have sick time, you already have these personal days, isn't that trying to add on more?
I think the 10 days he was talking about is coming here.
He was talking about 2 things.
different-
Well,
yeah.
but he talked about leaving, and I thought he wanted 10 remote days to go work somewhere else.
Correct, he was
Oh,
talking about
okay.
a certain number of remote days, he didn't specify.
But he never said how many.
And then in addition, he was talking about, I guess, an additional contract
11 work
period
days, yeah.
before the beginning of his contract in July 1, if the board was interested in purchasing. In terms of telework days, the board has the ability to do that. It is not common. Of the last 10, or of the last 11 superintendent contracts that I've prepared for school districts, not contain telework clauses.
I think in-house would be maybe a different conversation than telework. Like if you wanted to come sit left seat to Mr. Price for a handful of days, because
Yeah, that'd be
there
fine.
isn't any allotted turnover between you and him, correct? You finish out the school year, he starts the next school year?
Yep, I'm done on June
So there is
30th.
no overlap, unless it's out of the kindness of your heart answering phone calls. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think we're talking about 2 different things. That portion of it where he comes here, or you tell a remote in and says, how do you do things, I like that portion of it. I wasn't as in favor of the taking the time off during the summer and counting those remote work days. And it specifically said, I think, over Christmas and summer break. He already has those days built in my opinion. I don't know of a job nowadays that you can go to and train and not get paid for it.
Right, so I think he's either having him come on
Yeah.
his own time and not be paid for it, because he probably can't overlap if he's being paid for in Roberts, Montana, and getting paid for in Summers, because he would be doing both things at the same time while he's on the clock.
That's
So
what it
he's
is.
the one losing the money, potentially, or he'd do it remotely and be paid, you know what I'm saying? Like, he still has a
Well,
job
would
to
you
do in
just do that
Roberts.
during your normal day?
Yeah.
Sure.
If he came here, it'd just be part of his normal duties, I would
I
assume.
think he was asking to do it telework as well.
No, and he was
For
too.
Roberts.
Some days in person, some days tele. But I didn't have anything to do with Joe's money. It had to do with Joe's time.
Yes, but I think he mentioned July for some reason. I don't know if that was just the
Just a
paycheck.
pay-
That's when he'd actually get
Okay.
paid as like a sign bonus,
Okay.
not an hourly. Like, he would get a check April, May, June.
Okay. So my thought is, and just as we're considering it, is if he's doing this tele-wise, while Mr. Price is on the clock, do we have to HR-wise make sure that he is not being double compensated in Roberts, Montana, and for us?
No, a public employer, the double dipping statute only covers service for which the hours overlap. For instance, if you were to have a teacher decide that they liked bus duty better during their contracted day, and they were to walk out and go drive bus because they could make more money, and the district were required to sub in somebody during that period of time, that would be double dipping. If he's working for another entity, you don't have to consider that at all. Of course, I don't know what the terms of his contract with Roberts are. He likely still has duties there during this period of time. The whole question of whether the board wants to authorize transitional services or purchase these additional days from him is up to you. Right now, what the contract says is it starts July 1.
Well, this would affect you, Joe, so what are your thoughts on a transition plan?
Is there
I'm happy to
normally
help.
one?
I'm happy to help, but I'm going to be gone to Portugal in July.
So it has to be ahead of time.
So-
That's what we're saying.
Yeah, so,
I'll be back in August.
A little late.
yeah.
I've spoken up. I think those were my major concerns. Is that it just seems like there's a lot of asks.
And not just to, you never get it if you don't ask to. So on one
Right,
hand,
right,
it's a lot, but
exactly.
also if you don't. So, yeah,
But I also want to defend our school as a great place to come.
it is, yep. Yeah,
I'm sorry, it's a great place to come. And like you say, he's getting a 10% raise.
That's if we went to 120, and I guess
Yeah.
that's where
Yeah.
my mind was going, is we're not gonna do all this ancillary stuff. We'll incentivize you by doing a little more year one, a little more year two. We're not gonna go to year three, we'll stick to the 2-year contract. We're not doing remote days. You have pretty good personal days of vacation.
Yeah.
Now, am I correct that if he so chose, he could renegotiate his contract after year one?
Absolutely.
So at any point, he can come back and negotiate for another 2-year term. So we're not tying his hands to 2 years necessarily. Am I right?
Correct. And
Okay.
in fact, if he were to come in and in year one, knock your socks off,
Right.
be like, Alex is incredible, we need to pay him more immediately. You would have the ability to do that. You would also have the ability, if you wanted to address telework at that point, you could do it, right? If you trust Alex enough, and you know that he's going to be productive, engaged on those days, if he proves himself to you, come right back and structure it that way if you feel comfortable.
I think that's an important thing to remember.
Yeah.
So should we make a motion then?
Let's talk formal.
Or do you have?
Oh.
I had one more thing that.
Go ahead.
I did notice that Joe does get his cell phone stipend, and we didn't include that in a contract. Is that something we should include in the contract?
It's up to you. We can certainly have.
Right now, Joe gets $50 from Lakeside and $50 from Summer, so $100 a month.
Is that not just a whole policy? Did that
It's
happen?
$50 total.
It's
25 and
50 total. Oh, okay, sorry.
Is that something that was in the contract, or is that just school policy?
It's in my contract.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Isn't your cell phone, a tax write-off? though?
I don't write about
I
them.
believe, I'm just thinking, military-wise, I have to be on, have my own personal phone and answer it constantly, and I'm pretty certain I write it off on taxes.
Like the,
I'm not that smart.
I got a stipend.
Unless you report getting income for it.
Yes, of course. They go,
Well, and my stipend for the ambulance company was $45 a month. So if it's 50 total.
So if we have a cell phone, I look at the cherry on the top. Like,
I
I appreciate it. Yeah. That's awesome.
every benefit counts.
Yeah.
What was all that stuff? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I did write myself a note for $50 total. So that might be something we could add. I'm not sure it's going to sway him either way, but.
So again, for the, so let me ask you, the pre-days before Joe's done, would that be a separate motion since that would, or, because that wouldn't necessarily be part of, or I guess it's part of the signing notes, and mine, so it happened part of the contract, because that's how.
I think what you could do, rather than having a separate contract or a separate motion,
Yeah.
is just build it into the one motion, right? You would change your starting date. In year one, you would provide the additional compensation if you're inclined to do that, and just make it a part of the first year contract as a bonus. Indicate that it'll be subject to withholdings, just like the main salary. But yeah, I don't think you can do a separate contract or a separate motion.
Okay.
So I just want to be clear, we're talking about that $5,000. Is Is that what
And that's, I think you said 11 days.
Right.
Of which a few of those, so up to 3 days could be in person. And I
Yeah.
think you just took the contract amount and said that, you know, at the daily rate, that adds up to $5,000.
48 something.
And to be paid in July and,
Yeah.
and,
To be paid in July as a signing bonus, essentially.
right. So when would he be here? Because Joe's gone. I
Well,
don't-
that's
July 1.
No, he would be coordinating time between now. and
Yeah,
July.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
That would be part of the coordination and subject to you and Joe being notified and approving it, making sure it aligns with the schedules and everything.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather do that than the moving expenses because, like Andrew said, we have to have receipts for all of that.
Yeah.
So if we did the signing bonus, it would be cleaner.
Yeah.
So let's
So-
iterate. Oh, go ahead. Just trying to-
Is this a $5,000 signing bonus contingent on 11 remote and combination thereof person or in-person days before July 1st?
I wonder if he did 11 just to make the 5,000
Pretty
round off.
close to
I'm like,
that.
11's a weird number.
Yeah.
Maybe he thinks it's gonna take 11 days to do these things.
Or, yeah. He hasn't been here yet, has he?
Oh, no, I think he's coming next week. I just- So on the health insurance, we're going to keep it at the amount that is allowed for the principals, which I think was.
Well, I think it's maybe just clarifying some of it. right?
Yeah, so we'll stay the course on health insurance. We'll keep that language regarding non-union classified staff, make sure that he knows that that means his premium, and then anything on top of that is his responsibility. But given that you're making the decision to make a new offer in this way, to sort of unify all the things that he's asking for to one reason, I think you're in safe territory.
So are we saying no on the telework clause for, because it was two different things, right? For vacation days, but yes on telling him,
Yes.
talking to
Yeah, yeah. Transition
transition,
conversations and meetings.
transition plan,
Yeah.
it's okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a sign bonus, yeah. And I don't think we have to put in our motion what we're saying no to, because it's a whole new offer.
Yeah.
So we're only putting in the
Okay.
motion what we are
Yeah.
offering.
That's correct.
Oh, okay.
So we don't have to go in and say yes, no, we just
So I
say,
think that's, yeah, I like that in that
Right.
also, that we're just gonna give you back this offer. We're not gonna
Yeah.
individually list everything.
Right.
If you like it, you like it. If you don't,
I just, in my mind, I'm trying to make sure.
yeah.
yeah.
And then we're adding a $50 cell phone stipend.
You guys would make good attorney.
You're training us well. Professor, yeah.
So
Adam, you can say stuff at this meeting.
I'm listening thoroughly.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm tracking with kind of what you're saying.
Okay.
The other priorities, I don't feel strongly in support of those.
Yeah. So I guess maybe I'll make a,
Madam Chair, if I could recap, I think I have the form of the motion, and this is just a suggestion. It would be a motion to authorize MTSBA to offer Alex Ador a 2-year contract at $120,000 with 5 personal days, with a 4% increase in year 2.
can we change other things to 3, so it's a line?
You said 3?
Yeah, is that, what do you, I think that's kind of the,
3 what?
a 3% on from year 1 to
yes.
year 2, to be more in line.
But
With what the
I still think
teachers
that's
are.
more than what he would be getting in year 4 if he were to stay with it.
Got it. Yeah.
So that's 5 personal days with a 3% increase in year 2, a $5,000 signing bonus, and earlier starting date in the first year of the contract, 11 remote and in-person days before July 1st, 2025, with renegotiation after 2 years, $50 monthly cell phone stipend, and to authorize the chair to work with MTSBA on further negotiations. Finally, the entire offer being contingent on satisfactory results of a criminal background check.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Second that. Any comments? No? You good? All right.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Make a motion to adjourn.
There it is.